If Dave Kroupa had known how his online dating would turn out, he would never have registered on a dating site. He would have continued to live his old life, with his girlfriend Amy Flora and their 2 children together. Maybe finally, he would have legalized the 12-year relationship after all. Especially since after the breakup, Amy and Dave remained good friends. Periodically, they spent vacations together with their children, fulfilling their parenting duties to perfection. That was in 2011, and by the summer of 2012, Dave was ready to start a new relationship. Only the man was not looking for any commitment, preferring to remain single. He wanted to get acquainted with women who would not mind a free relationship and did not make far-reaching plans. With such thoughts, he came to the dating site, a place where everyone is looking for something different. The modern world has brought with it new technologies that allow you to build communication at a distance, bypassing many nuances, the awkwardness of the first acquaintance, the appearance at the same time, the fear of being rejected. Now, to get acquainted with someone who is interesting to you, it has become simple. It is enough only to choose the intended partner by a set of characteristics specified by him in the questionnaire. Even leave the house for this unnecessary. However, who is hiding behind a cute avatar profile, it is not known, and whether he corresponds to those features that describe too. And the real goals of dating are not always voiced in advance and found out at later stages of the relationship. Cari Farver was born on November 30th, 1974 in Macedonia, Nebraska, USA. Having a failed experience of previous relationships, she alone raised her son, Maxwell. At one time, the child was a reward as well as a challenge for her. Despite her great love for the baby, she once spent a month in bed, going into a deep depression. The child's care was provided by Carrie's mother, Nancy Rainey. Difficult relations with the father of the child, unsettled living conditions, served as a reason for the appearance of a young 20-year-old woman such an acute psychological state. Doctors later diagnosed Farver with bipolar disorder. People with this diagnosis are like 2 sides of the same coin. The person falls into extremes. His mood becomes either too good or too bad. Euphoria, increased efficiency, extreme friendliness is replaced by a depressed state, bitterness, impotence, and so on. The disease greatly complicates the normal life of a person, but in the early 2000s, Carrie's doctor was able to find such an effective treatment for her, after which she was able to live like other people. Whether she wanted to settle her personal life is a rhetorical question. On the one hand, absolutely. What woman does not dream of a worthy companion? On the other hand, why tie yourself to someone who may later become the cause of many worries and misfortunes? Carrie grew up in a full loving family, had an active life position, engaged in sports, dreamed of devoting herself to medicine. However, dreams were not allowed to materialize. At the first practice in the medical college, where the girl entered, she lost consciousness at the sight of blood. Therefore, deciding not to risk neither her health nor the health of patients, she studied to become a programmer. In the fall of 2012 in the neighboring city of Omaha, Carrie was offered a job on good terms. She couldn't turn down the prospects that lay ahead of her, so she accepted the offer. Since Max was in middle school, the boy did not want to change his familiar surroundings and move with his mother. He remained to reside with his grandmother in Macedonia. Cari Farver's friend, Amy Long, recalled that she couldn't help but be noticed. When she walked into a room, all eyes were on her and her radiant smile. Perhaps that's what Dave Kroupa liked about her one November day in 2012. Carrie met Dave at the auto repair shop where he worked. While looking at Carrie's car, a Ford Explorer, he realized he was very attractive to this woman. She's showing me something inside the car, and we're standing there and we're very close, and there was some tension, Dave later recalled. It didn't take long for the date to arrive, and it was afterward that they went up to Dave's house. Except that their privacy was marred by many calls and messages from a certain Liz, who later stopped by the man's apartment to pick up something left for her earlier. Dave explained to Carrie that this was his former companion, Liz Golyar, whom he met on a dating site about 6 months ago and had been dating for a while. He also explained that the woman was extremely clingy, which was the reason for their breakup. Carrie was very understanding, so she wasn't confused when she saw another woman in the man's apartment. After all, Everyone has their own handleless suitcase from the past that occasionally makes itself known. So Carrie remained unfazed, but Liz was clearly upset to see a strange woman in Dave's house. 2 weeks after moving in, Carrie began dating Dave. They had discussed their relationship with each other beforehand, agreeing only to a brief, unencumbered affair. Shanna Elizabeth Golyar, better known as Liz, was the first person Dave met online in 2012. Liz was born in 1975 in Michigan. Dave liked her at first. She claimed that she was also not looking for a serious relationship, especially since she was a mother, and most of her time should be spent on her children, not men. By the way, they both had children around the same age. Dave repeatedly noted that Liz was unlikely to be a real-life partner for him, since she was neither well-read nor educated, which was important in a relationship between a man and a woman. They had few topics of conversation, and the relationship emphasized more on the horizontal. Over time, Liz became interested in what Dave was doing in her absence, who he was seeing, to which the man repeatedly pointed out that they were in an open relationship and she shouldn't care. Dave also told her that she could behave as she wished, that he did not restrict her from dating other men. However, apparently Liz was not satisfied with this, and she began to pester Dave more and more. But most of all, Liz was jealous of Dave's children and their mother Amy. She couldn't understand the warm relationship that remained between them after the breakup. Eventually, Liz's actions forced Dave to distance himself. Then Carrie appeared on the horizon. Carrie was beautiful, with style and intelligence. Dave could talk to her for hours. They matched on everything. "I felt like I hit the jackpot," Dave claimed. Liz, sensing that the man was pulling away from her more and more, began to remind him of himself with more activity. She wrote messages, emails, and called. However, he wasn't going to stop seeing Carrie or anyone else for her. Soon, Carrie and Dave were spending more and more nights together. Dave allowed himself to do this because it was convenient for Carrie to get to work, and he enjoyed her company. Carrie acted like she was not looking for something serious, but was just enjoying the moment, having fun. In December 2015, Liz was shot. The woman, in all likelihood, guessed who it was. As luck would have it, the wound turned out to be non-fatal. "This can't go on any longer. I have to do something about it," thought Liz. Leaving for work on November 13th, 2012, Carrie kissed Dave and promised to see him later. That was the last time he would see her. At 9:45 a.m. while at work, Dave was very surprised by the contents of a text message from Carrie. She texted him that she wanted to live with him and move in with him permanently. The correspondence was very disconcerting to Kroupa. He could not understand Farver's sudden change of mood, as they had discussed this point beforehand. They had jointly decided that they would not rush into a relationship. They were happy as they were now. The message, however, told a different story. Dave gently replied that he wasn't ready for such a change. The counter-message from Carrie was not pleasant. "Lots of profanity," he described the message. "I didn't know what to think. I was shocked." When he returned to the apartment, he found that all of Carrie's belongings that she had brought to him were gone. Apparently, that's why he thought the woman had left him. That same day, Carrie deleted him from her Facebook friends. That would seem to be the end of it. But no. Dave started receiving text messages and emails from Carrie several times a day. They contained curses and threats to ruin his life. There were so many of them, and they were all rude. Carrie also didn't show up for work, which was unlike her, since she was notable for her punctuality. Strange messages from Cari Farver were sent not only to Dave Kroupa, but also to her mother and her 15-year-old son. She wrote that she had found a job in Kansas and planned to take Max. But for now, she wants to be alone as she is worried about her failed romance. In May 2013, Carrie in her Facebook profile published a rather long post, which read, "I've answered enough questions to prove to everyone that I've had enough. You can either believe I'm your daughter, mother, sister, and friend you've known your whole life, or just leave me alone. I left of my own free will, and I'm sick of everyone giving me a hard time for doing what I had to do. I don't miss it, I just don't want to go home right now. I'm a grown woman, and if I feel like leaving home, I have the right to do so. So when I'm ready to come home, I will. I'm sorry that after hurting everyone, I just up and left." Time passed, however. Carrie never showed up. The woman's mother clearly realized something was wrong with her daughter when she missed her own birthday, as well as Max's birthday and other family celebrations. The final straw was her father's funeral. After a while, Liz Golyar also started receiving messages from Carrie. In them, she insulted and humiliated the woman, and some messages contained a threat to stay away from Dave. In order for the man to be able to explain such strange behavior of her friend, Liz decided to contact him. He told her that he was in exactly the same situation. Carrie attacked him with messages and emails. In them, the woman accused her former lover of all sins, called him a lecher, and promised revenge for all the pain he had caused her with his response. Sometimes the messages were ominous in nature, telling her what Dave was up to at the moment. The fact that they were in the same position brought Dave and Liz even closer together. He felt even more guilty for the inconvenience he had caused her. Soon, the incessant messages from Carrie became more threatening. The text was illogical and full of grammatical errors. Carrie's mother insisted that her daughter had never been an angry person and that she had always written letters and other documents correctly. Carrie was meticulous about spelling and style. Did Carrie's bipolar disorder develop into something more after a second trigger? Could it be that she had experienced even greater mental abnormalities? There was no explanation for Carrie's actions other than her uncontrolled mental state. The main sign of dissociative identity disorder, split personality, is the existence of a separate self-consciousness in each ego. At the same time, each of them has a different memory, thinking, behavior, and even inclinations to certain actions. Could this explain Carrie's strange behavior and even her altered writing style? Everything pointed to the woman's instability. That's why the police didn't consider Cari Farver missing. Focused on stopping the pursuit of Liz and Dave, they tried to track Carrie through her cell phone. But it was all in vain. The signals were being blocked. Liz and Dave were still receiving hundreds of texts and emails. Sometimes, even when they were together, their phones would receive nasty messages at the same time. The couple continued to date, but Dave felt uncomfortable around Liz. She became more demanding again, although she continued to claim that she was fine with their no-commitment relationship. Every time Dave fought with Liz and ended his relationship with her, Carrie increasingly texted, "We were both victimized. Dave and I had something in common that we didn't have with anyone else," says Liz. Common problems brought the young people closer together, and they returned to each other again and again. In January 2013, Dave discovered the missing Carrie's car in his front yard. Surprisingly, the fingerprints on the steering wheel did not belong to Carrie, and in general, the car was clean. No suspicious traces were found in it. The police later turned the car over to Farver's parents. Carrie continued to write to Liz and Dave. It got to the point where she started sending pictures of their children and threatening to hurt them if Dave didn't leave Liz alone. Time passed, but there were no results. Carrie's manic stalking continued, and Liz annoyed Dave more and more with her jealousy as he continued to socialize with other women. He grew tired of what was going on in his life and finally found the strength to finally end his relationship with Liz. Soon after, another tragedy occurred. In August 2013, Liz Golyar reported a fire in her home that killed all of her pets, including a snake, a cat, and 2 dogs. Liz told police she suspected Carrie was responsible for what happened. The woman had threatened her repeatedly in her texts and emails. The incident marked a turning point in the case of the missing Carrie. Cari Farver was put on a federal wanted list, and each of the tens of thousands of messages was decided to be studied in detail. Law enforcement seized cell phones from Dave and Liz. Kroupa believed he was in danger too, so he bought a gun for protection. There was a reason for that. Someone vandalized the auto repair shop where he worked and threw a brick through his window. Carrie seemed to direct his anger at anyone in Dave's life. After a while, the mother of his children, Amy Flora, also began receiving threatening messages from Carrie. Since the man often spent time with his children, he often saw Amy as well. Police became suspicious. Why would a man who had dated Dave for less than 2 weeks for 3 years now stalk him and his ex-girlfriends? It just didn't make any sense. Cari Farver's relatives were also relentless, searching for the missing woman, plugging in every way they could to find her. And one day, in the spring of 2015, the efforts paid off. Detectives Ryan Avis and Jim Doty volunteered to solve Cari Farver's disappearance. They found no evidence that Carrie was alive. Here's what one of them told ABC News. "It's not normal for adults to just pick up and leave without literally spending any money. No one saw her and no one heard her voice. It just doesn't make sense. She had a good income, a nice house. I've come to the conclusion that I can't prove that she's actually alive." With the help of Anthony Kawa, digital forensics administrator for the Potawatomi County Sheriff's Office, detectives reviewed content downloaded from Kroupa and Golyar's phones in 2013. Kawa said Cari Farver sent more than 50,000 texts and 15,000 emails to Dave over a 3-year period. Kawa added, "Whoever was impersonating Carrie, that certain someone became more and more sophisticated in what they were doing, trying to hide their IP address, trying to hide their real identity. Somebody obviously knew what they were doing, knew all kinds of computer programs, at least had access to them." In December 2015, Liz Golyar contacted the police again. She reported that she had been shot in the leg on the doorstep of her own home. According to her, it was not Carrie, but Amy Flora. She was the one she recognized as her attacker. Dave was also missing a gun that Amy may have had access to. Could this woman be behind Carrie's disappearance? There was a lead in the investigation. It explained why everyone connected to Dave Kroupa was being harassed. It could well be that Amy, having failed to settle her personal life after the breakup with the father of her children, decided to take revenge in this way and eliminate all competitors. Especially since the relationship between Dave and Amy has always been not bad, the joint children brought them closer together, and foreign women clearly prevented them from getting back together. It didn't take long for the police to respond. Amy was questioned. However, to everyone's surprise, she had an alibi. She had not been at Liz's house at the time of the shooting. This was confirmed by several people, so no arrest was made. The investigation became more and more confusing. At the same time, new details became known from the specialists who were processing data from Liz's cell phone. Golyar's phone contained a wealth of information. Kava discovered fake email addresses with different variations of Farver's name. Investigators also discovered an app she used to schedule messages to be sent at certain times. This could explain how she and Dave were receiving messages from Carrie at the same time. Kava became suspicious of Liz Golyar. The puzzle came together when Liz's fingerprints were compared to those found on the steering wheel of Carrie's car. They were a perfect match. It became obvious who the culprit was. The killer had been around all these years, and there was no telling who else might have been affected by her actions. One thing was clear. The case had to be stopped as soon as possible. The only thing left to do was not to scare Liz away, or better yet, catch her red-handed. Something had to be done to throw the woman off balance. The detectives decided to make up a story about supposedly believing Liz, with Amy still being the prime suspect. Liz took the bait. She was overjoyed that she would finally be able to get rid of another rival that was interfering with her happiness with Dave. Shortly afterward, Liz Golyar handed the police an email that she claimed was from Amy. In that email, Amy admitted to kidnapping Carrie. It also contained details of the crime. The confession stated that Carrie had been stabbed earlier in the stomach or chest area and then disposed of the body. Details from the letter also contained information about Carrie's car and home, which were not made public. The details were chilling because they were graphic, an investigative spokeswoman said. Liz provided detectives with the kind of information that only a true criminal could possess. Thus, she inadvertently confessed to the murder of Cari Farver. It was clear from the letter that the crime had taken place in the car. Therefore, it was decided to examine the victim's car once again. After the specialists removed the seat covers and fabric, a bloodstain belonging to the disappeared Cari Farver was found. How did Liz manage to poison messages on Carrie's behalf and yet remain above suspicion? Some sources claim that Liz Golyar led a double life, dating both Dave and a man named Garrett. The latter lived on an IP address that was identified as the starting point of messages coming from Carrie's name. In the course of communicating with him, it was revealed that he had been dating Shanna Golyar, whom many knew as Liz, for a long time. Out of kindness, the man offered Shanna to move in with his children after the fire. However, the relationship between the two was complicated and deteriorated markedly after they began living together. Garrett would look after Golyar's children while she secluded herself in her room or went somewhere else. It came as a big revelation to the man what police told him. Golyar spent 40 to 50 hours a week pretending to be the missing woman. Her room was a mess, but no significant evidence was found. However, investigators did find several cell phones and electronics in the last apartment she occupied. In late December 2016, Shanna Golyar was charged with first-degree murder. The county prosecutor spoke about the complexity of the court investigation. Most murders are dark. This crime was bizarre to the point where it would take some convincing to make someone believe it actually happened. There's no way someone would have let their dog die in a fire they set themselves. There's no way someone would have shot themselves in the thigh, yet Shanna Golyar did it in order to deflect suspicion from herself. Shanna Golyar's attorney, James Martin Davis, hoped the case would fall apart because it relied mostly on circumstantial evidence. Carrie's body was never found, nor was the crime weapon, and Golyar herself never confessed. There was no evidence that Carrie had died at all. The defense team opted for a mistrial, meaning that the degree of Shanna's guilt would be determined by a judge, not a jury. Mountains of complex electronic evidence were presented along with physical evidence. However, the prosecution insisted that the amount of blood found on the passenger seat of Carrie's car was consistent with a confession of stabbing from the IP address where Shanna lived. Investigators did establish Shanna's direct link to Carrie's murder by analyzing the memory card she was using around the time Carrie went missing. It was in a tablet that was stored in Dave's possession. Deleted images were recovered, including a photo of a human foot with a Chinese symbol tattooed on it. It was immediately obvious that the foot belonged to a man who had been dead for many years. In addition, among Carrie's special features was a similar tattoo. Later, the woman's mother confirmed that the tattoo really belongs to her daughter. The photo confirmed Shanna Golyar's conviction. The judge found her guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He said, "Cari Farver did not disappear voluntarily. It is very unfortunate that she was murdered." Authorities believe Shanna killed Carrie, gave her body time to decompose, and then burned the remains to get rid of all evidence. Probably overstepping her bounds due to jealousy, she decided to get rid of her rival. After disposing of her, she purposely took her cell phone to make Farver look crazy and win back Dave's favor. When her plan succeeded, Shanna wanted to rid her lover of Amy as well. But she got so caught up in the game that she ended up falling into a trap of her own making. It's a bloody love square, to say the least. Golyar was also found guilty of setting fire to her own home in August 2013, which she tried so hard to blame on Carrie. Because the fire not only burned down the house but also killed pets, she received an additional 20 years in prison. The woman is currently incarcerated at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women. Shanna still maintains her innocence. Dave admitted that he has received thousands of emails and text messages signed by Carrie over the years. However, he never noticed her stalking him when they were together, which cannot be said for Shanna. He also added, "I want her to leave and not do this to anyone else." Justice has been served. For a long time, Cari Farver's name was on everyone's lips. She was innocently accused of stalking people as well as burning Shanna's house down. Now Carrie herself has been recognized as a victim, and her good name has been restored. Carrie's mother wanted her daughter to be remembered as the fun, smart, talented woman she was. So what became of Carrie's son, Maxwell Farver of Macedonia? According to his LinkedIn page profile, he followed in his mother's footsteps by becoming a computer programmer. He graduated from the University of Iowa with a degree in software engineering, data science, and got married. It's unlikely he was able to forget what happened, but he may have found peace in the family he created. Because of his past, Dave Kroupa has now chosen to live away from the limelight. In fact, he doesn't even have a public account on any social media platform. The chilling crime story is a brutal reminder of the tangled complexities that can arise in human relationships, of all kinds of manipulation, sometimes going to extremes just to maintain control of the situation. It is a story about how defenseless we can be in our familiar surroundings without knowing the true nature of human beings. The case involving the crime against 8 members of the Roden family became one of the most notorious and complex in Ohio. Overnight, the motto, "all for one and one for all," became fatal for each family member. Only the minor children were spared from the mass violence. The investigation spanned over 10 states in the USA. Detectives conducted more than 600 interviews, gathering around 700 witness statements. Various theories were considered: self-harm, retaliation by illegal substance dealers, and cult sacrifices. Attorney General Mike DeWine even suspected local residents of withholding crucial information. It seemed the investigation had hit a dead end. Until a moment came when a solution, lying on the surface, became apparent. As it turns out, the most complex situations are often rooted in simplicity. This story illustrates how familial bonds turned into a bloodbath. In Pike County, Ohio, USA, it all began with a simple crush. Hannah Mae Roden was 13 years old when she met 18-year-old Edward Jake Wagner. The young man invited her to the prom. From that evening on, they were inseparable. Their relationship elicited mixed feelings. Undoubtedly, the love that blossomed between them was visible to the naked eye. On the other hand, the age difference raised many questions and doubts. However, the young couple's parents did not obstruct their relationship. After all, everyone had been young once. Over time, the Roden and Wagner families started spending weekends and parties together. Love was passionate and carefree. When Hannah turned 15, she announced her pregnancy. Upon hearing the news, Jake was overjoyed. He anticipated how delighted his family would be with the new addition. The Wagners highly valued traditions and lineage, hence adored children. In them, they saw the continuation of their lineage. Even ancestral names were passed down from generation to generation. Jake's father was named George Wagner III, and his brother, George Wagner IV. The Rodens, on the other hand, had a simpler, less ostentatious approach to children, but this did not diminish their family values. Christopher and Dana Roden, Hannah's parents, remained very close and united even after their divorce. They loved their 3 children and dedicated their lives to their well-being. Unlike the Wagners, the Roden family had a modest income. 40-year-old Christopher worked as a handyman at the Big Bear Lake family complex, while 37-year-old Dana was a nurse's aide at a youth rehabilitation center. Nevertheless, they managed to instill humanity and diligence in Christopher Jr., Hannah, and Clarence, Frankie. Everyone was thrilled about the arrival of little Sophie. To celebrate her birthday, a grand party was organized. Soon after, Jake suggested that Hannah move in with him and his family, arguing that it would make life more comfortable for both of them, a point hard to contest when living in a trailer. His logic seemed sound, but Hannah declined. By that time, she had come to understand her partner better and saw the invitation as an attempt to limit her independence. Moreover, the once caring and attentive young man had become suspicious and aggressive. Jake had resorted to physical aggression on several occasions. His rough behavior cooled Hannah's feelings for him. Her refusal became a bone of contention for the Wagners. Now, each of Sophie's parents was determined to gain full custody of the girl. The families began to advocate for their own interests. Driven by his desire, Jake went as far as to threaten his beloved, angry that she refused to sign a document transferring custody rights to him and his brother. In a fit of anger, he once messaged her, saying that if necessary, he would take the daughter by force. "If you truly loved her, you wouldn't resist. You would have long ago handed her over to be raised in a healthy environment," he claimed. For some reason, he believed the Rodens posed a danger to Sophie. Such conversations continued for 2 years, during which Jake became more tyrannical. Hannah grew tired of the total control and in March 2015 completely ended the relationship. Moreover, she had come to know something alarming. It turned out that Jake's brother, George IV, had gained custody of a son by threatening the boy's mother with a weapon. This confirmed that the Wagners saw moral and physical coercion as acceptable means. To protect herself and her daughter from this unscrupulous family, the young Roden decided to distance herself. She wanted to raise her daughter alone while working as a nurse's assistant and finishing school. The situation worsened when everyone learned about Hannah's second pregnancy. Although she claimed the child was from another man, Jake had his doubts. He attempted to find out if she was seeing someone else. So, in December 2015, he hacked into her social media accounts but found nothing incriminating. At the end of his search, he noticed that the woman was communicating with George IV's former mother-in-law, which sparked genuine interest. A court case was soon to follow, during which the Wagner family repeatedly interacted with the woman. "They'll have to eliminate me before they can take custody of my daughter," Hannah wrote in her message. Jake shared the details of the correspondence with his family, infuriating them. Then his maternal grandmother, 65-year-old Rita Newcomb, forged an important document regarding custody. Moreover, during a court session to determine the granddaughter's residence, Christopher Roden and George Wagner III had a serious disagreement. Ultimately, the relationship between the families completely deteriorated. Soon, a terrible idea occurred to the Wagner family. Hannah was so uncooperative that they felt the need to eliminate her, as well as the entire Roden family, who could claim custody of Sophie. This insane thought turned into a monstrous plan that solidified by Christmas 2016. People's thoughts during the festive season are usually focused on love and creation, which cannot be said for the Wagner couple, who organized a vote. It was decided whether they would implement their plan. All family members agreed. The only thing left was to assign roles and prepare. 5 months were spent studying the Roden homes and surveillance cameras, with special attention to their daily routines and work schedules. Each person in the criminal plot was responsible for something. For instance, Angela Wagner bought sneakers for all family members to wear at a predetermined time. To prevent the victims from seeking help, she acquired a special device to block communication, planning to secretly install it on the Rodens' phones. To minimize noise, George III suggested making homemade silencers. He also took care of the transportation on the night of the crime, aiming to secure a van that would not draw attention. Sophie was to stay safe at home with Angela, as the court had granted Hannah and Jake joint custody. The Wagners chose a time when it was their turn to look after the girl, meticulously planning every detail for a flawless execution. On the night of April 21, 2016, George Wagner III decided to visit Christopher Roden, allegedly to offer him a job opportunity that could improve his financial situation. The job offer was merely a pretext to gain entry into the house. Unsuspectingly, Roden Sr. opened the door. On the morning of April 22, 2016, at about 8 p.m., Bobby Jo Manley, Dana Roden's sister, entered Christopher's trailer. She did this daily since the day he had offered her a job. Bobby took care of the animals belonging to the Roden family. She noticed someone was inside, which was unusual for that time when everyone typically went about their business. Inside the trailer, in a pool of blood, lay Christopher and 38-year-old Carrie, his cousin. The men lived together. In horror, she grabbed the phone and dialed emergency services, reporting what she had seen and requesting assistance at 4077 Union Hill Road. Shocked, Bobby proceeded to the homes of other relatives. She knocked loudly on one of their doors. Soon, a 3-year-old boy, Clarence Roden's son, appeared. She asked him where his parents were, but the boy did not respond, only pointing towards the bed. Entering the house, she screamed at the sight of 20-year-olds Clarence and Hannah Hazel, his wife. The couple was deceased, with their 6-month-old baby stirring between them, alive but splattered with the blood of his parents. After Bobby's 911 call, the police immediately headed to the given address. As they approached the Roden property, they were stopped by a neighbor. Sensing trouble, he asked the officers to check 2 more addresses of the family members. He was right. In the 3rd trailer, police found bloodied bodies. The victims were identified as Dana, 19-year-old Hannah, and 16-year-old Christopher. The attackers spared Hannah's youngest child, a baby girl only a few days old. Later, another victim was discovered, 44-year-old Kenneth, the elder Roden's brother, who lived a 15-minute walk from the others. By 2 in the afternoon, 8 victims had been identified: Christopher, Dana, Clarence, Hannah Hazel, Christopher Jr., Hannah Mae, Kenneth, and Gary. The only survivors were small children, a 3-year-old, a 6-month-old baby, and a newborn just 4 days old, along with 2-year-old Sophie, who was at the Wagners' home at the time of the incident. After examining the bodies, police surmised that all of the victims had been killed in their sleep by gunshot wounds. Detectives later pieced together the events of that night. The patriarch of the family was awake when the attackers burst into the house, as evidenced by a wound on his right arm. Christopher attempted to defend himself, but was hit with 9 shots to the head, torso, and limbs. 5 bullets were removed from Dana Roden's neck and head. The rest of the family was killed by gunshots to the head. Gary was shot 5 times. Christopher Jr. was shot 4 times. Clarence and his wife Hannah were shot 3 times each, and Hannah Mae was shot twice. Kenneth was the only one to be shot once. In total, the assailants fired 32 shots, some even posthumously. In addition, bruises were found on some of the bodies, indicating physical abuse. Since no one in the vicinity heard anything, investigators concluded that the perpetrators used silencers, indicating a carefully planned and executed act. It was clear that the victims were not random. Someone wanted revenge on the entire family. During the search, police found 5 Remington shell casings of different types and an unused bullet from a different model of gun. In addition, the scattered nature of the trailers indicated that more than one person had committed the crime. Leonard Manley, Dana's father, claimed, "The criminals knew the Rodens well, or the dogs would have been barking all over the pike." The question of who dared to commit such an act kept police officers busy. The Attorney General's office provided more than $20,000 for the funeral of the Roden family. The deceased were interred in several stages. On April 28, 2016, Gary was the first of the victims to be buried in South Shore, Kentucky. He was followed by Hannah Hazel, whose farewell was held on May 1st in the village of Otway, Scioto County, Ohio. The other victims were buried on May 3rd in West Portsmouth, in the same county. Many local residents came to say goodbye to the family and pay their respects. As for the fate of the surviving children, they were placed in the care of relatives. A wave of panic swept through the neighborhood. The police urged the relatives of the Rodens to take necessary precautions and advised all residents of Pike to stay away from their homes at night. The cold-blooded mass murder outraged residents across the state, who demanded that the results of the investigation be made public and that the perpetrators be apprehended as soon as possible. Cincinnati businessman Jeff Ruby offered $25,000 for information that would help arrest and convict those involved in the murder, but he later declined the reward offer. No less than 100 individuals were part of the investigative task force working on the Roden case. Following the funerals as part of the investigation, 3 trailers belonging to the slain family were towed away. The following day, several more vehicles met the same fate, all transported to a secure facility. This was done to preserve evidence and protect the personal belongings of the deceased. After the investigation, the family's cars and farming equipment were planned to be returned to the victims' relatives. Forensic specialists joined the investigation. Trailers were meticulously examined. However, no DNA of the suspects was found in any of them. Cameras had been installed in the mobile homes, but they too provided no information as they had been disabled. Those who planned the crime had thought through every detail meticulously. It seemed there were no significant leads until detectives discovered something. Cannabis crops were found at 3 crime scenes. In one location, there were about 200 plants. Officers believed the cannabis was grown for sale, not personal use, leading to speculation about the involvement of Mexican drug traffickers. However, the amount of cannabis found was too insignificant to suggest an attack by an entire cartel. In January 2017, a close relative of the Roden family was arrested for drug trafficking, which was considered a coincidental circumstance. Leonard Manley stated that his daughter had no involvement with the cannabis operations. "They're trying to drag Dana through the mud, and I don't like it," he asserted. Some family members confirmed that Christopher and Kenneth Roden, the older brothers, grew marijuana, but were unaware of any large-scale cultivation. The theory of a family feud over criminally obtained money was also debunked. Alongside the prohibited substances, specialized equipment for breeding chickens for cockfighting, as well as cages with fighting cocks, were found at the Rodens. It soon became clear that illegal cockfights were not the cause of the homicides either. Months went by without uncovering the true motive behind the crime. It reached a point where, on April 13, 2017, local authorities announced they lacked sufficient evidence to make any arrests. Nevertheless, prosecutor Rob Young stated the investigation was ongoing, suggesting they had some leads they were not yet ready to disclose. Another year passed, and the second anniversary of the mass crime received little attention, with no coverage in the local press, and neither the sheriff nor the prosecutor attending the memorial service. This led the community to believe the investigation had stalled. Unexpectedly, on May 12, 2017, a SWAT team raided a home in Pike County, 10 miles from the crime scene, initially searching for suspects, but later revealed to be gathering evidence. Detectives also searched a house in Adams County once owned by Jake Wagner, though he had sold it by then. On June 20, 2017, the investigation publicly shifted focus to the Wagner family. 26-year-old Jake, 27-year-old George III, 47-year-old George IV, and 48-year-old Angela, who lived 15 miles from the victims. The Wagners had moved to Kenai, Alaska, citing difficulties staying in the area. They claimed to have loved the Roden family, stating their deaths caused them immense suffering. Rob Young's words from a year earlier proved true, as the investigation had made a breakthrough and was now seeking information from the public on the Wagners' discussions about firearms, ammunition, vehicles, etc., 2 years prior. It wasn't long before the suspects, running low on funds, returned to Ohio, where detectives had gathered enough evidence for arrests, including proving Jake had hacked into Hannah's account. During the examination of the Wagner family's devices, search queries related to guardianship were discovered. It was also found that Angela had purchased sneakers for the entire family just a few weeks before the crime. The tread pattern of one of these matched that found in one of the trailers. Officers believed Angela was the mastermind behind the horrific scheme, with Jake as the primary executor. According to the investigation, each family member was involved in the criminal act. On November 13, 2018, the Attorney General announced the arrest of the Wagner couple, as well as their sons. They were charged with planning and carrying out the termination of life. Rita Newcomb, Angela's 65-year-old mother, and Frederica Wagner, George III's mother, were also arrested. They faced charges of perjury and obstructing justice. In 2019, Rita Newcomb underwent handwriting analysis, which proved her involvement in forging a guardianship document for Sophie. Later, to avoid imprisonment, she struck a plea deal. The charges against Frederica Wagner were dropped in June 2019. The other Wagners remained incarcerated, having refused to cooperate with the investigation. They denied any involvement in the deaths of the Rodens and expressed sorrow over their passing, wishing for the real perpetrators to be caught. However, on April 22, 2021, 5 years after the tragic incident, Jake decided to make a deal with the prosecution. The agreement was that he would disclose details of the crime in exchange for all family members receiving life sentences instead of the death penalty. Wagner Jr. admitted to taking the lives of 5 out of 8 individuals. Thus, he pleaded guilty to 23 criminal charges, including 8 counts of aggravated crime. The remaining charges included burglary, conspiracy, illegal possession of dangerous ammunition, forgery of evidence and documents, interception of telegrams and oral messages, unauthorized use of property, obstruction of justice, involvement in corrupt activities, and unlawful intimate conduct with a young woman. He indicated that eliminating the mother was seen as the only way to secure custody of his daughter. By taking Hannah's life, he felt compelled to do the same to the other Rodens, fearing they would seek vengeance and refuse to relinquish the girl. The next to stand trial was Angela. On September 10th, She pled guilty to conspiracy to commit aggravated crime, robbery, and evidence tampering. She also agreed to testify against the other defendants. In exchange, the charge of ending a life was dropped. Angela was sentenced to 30 years in prison. The trial of George Wagner IV began on August 28, 2022. The man denied any involvement in the crimes, insisting he was completely unaware. Conversely, the prosecution argued his participation in planning, executing, and concealing the crimes. Ultimately, George IV was found guilty on 22 counts and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The trial for George III is scheduled for February 2024. Despite his entire family being convicted, he continues to claim innocence, likely facing the same fate as his older son. This once harmonious relationship ended in tragedy. The collective madness of the Wagners is beyond understanding and forgiveness. Their actions left 3 children orphaned. What will become of Sophie when she grows up and realizes what happened? In their fight for custody and a facade of well-being, the Wagners deprived the young girl of loving parents, relatives, and a peaceful life. The fear of snakes is perhaps the most common phobia on Earth, and it seems understandable. Some of them are lethal, so fearing snakes is just a genetically ingrained instinct of survival in our brains. However, it would be unfair to label snakes solely as predators. They are also amazing creatures with incredible abilities and appearances, capable of evoking a wide range of emotions, but certainly leaving no one indifferent. In our story today, we'll talk about a rare snake that suddenly attacked its owner, ending his life. Ben Rennick was just 29 years old when he was found deceased in his renowned snake breeding facility. Benjamin Blue Birch Rennick was born in August 1987 in Missouri. He grew up in the countryside alongside his family. Ben had an older brother, Sam, with whom he shared a very close bond. In 1989, the Rennick family moved to a picturesque farmhouse. The boys spent a lot of their time outdoors, and it was then that Ben began to take an interest in snakes. A tragic incident in September 1992 triggered a series of unfortunate events. The family was away when a gas leak occurred, leading to an explosion in their beautiful home. The Rennicks were forced to move into a trailer. After some time, Ben's mother, Kim, was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. Despite these hardships, the family overcame. They were very close-knit and always supported each other in any situation. Recovering from previous tragedies in 2002, they moved to a new home where a special room was designed for Ben to keep his snakes. In 2009, after a long battle with cancer, Kim passed away. Before her death, she made her sons promise to look after the farm and pass it on to their children. As time went by, Ben's love for snakes knew no bounds, and the young man founded Rennick Reptiles, which soon gained recognition. This allowed him to sell snakes worldwide from the United Kingdom to Japan. Breeding snakes became the meaning of his life. He was described as a great breeder who was devoted to his work, caring more about the snakes than the money. The reptile farm bred a multitude of reptilian subspecies, growing and reproducing both the most common species and some of the rarest subspecies on Earth. Ben's reptiles were of immense value. Just a portion of his pie farm collection was valued at over $1 million. However, Ben was lonely and had long dreamed of starting a family. So in 2010 at a party, he met a woman named Lindley. Their relationship progressed rapidly, and within weeks, Ben introduced his girlfriend to his brother Sam and Sam's fiancé Eli. Eli and Lindley had sons from previous relationships, so they quickly found common ground and became friends. Lindley swiftly became part of the Rennick family, and they started living together. She assisted Ben on the snake breeding farm. They were in love and lived as a full family even before they made their union official. In March 2012, Lindley gave birth to a daughter, Amelia. Ben was overjoyed to become a father. However, the happy family life once again encountered problems. Frank Rennick, Ben's father, encountered significant troubles in his business. Previously, he had engaged in several fraudulent stock transactions to cover medical bills and Kim's treatment. Just a day before the FBI planned to visit the farm, Frank took his own life. Frank's passing halted the investigation. The sons were deeply affected by yet another parental loss, but managed to get through it, coming together and supporting one another once more. Ben inherited the house and farm, while Sam received a sum of money far exceeding the house's value. Each brother had his own family and children, but this never prevented them from living as one big family in their parents' home. They lived together, and Sam, without hesitation, spent his inheritance on repairing the farm. Initially, everything was fine, but soon financial disputes caused a rift between the brothers. After their father's death, Ben focused on his business and his family. He decided to formalize his relationship with Lindley. On April 14, 2014, they married, making Lindley a full-fledged member of the Rennick household. Lindley and Ben opened a second business, a spa called Essentia Spa Inc. But the business Lindley managed faced financial difficulties. Ben and Lindley often argued about finances. Lindley worked hard, but not enough to cover the salon's expenses. At the same time, Sam and his wife also faced financial challenges. Ben allowed them to sell some of the furniture in the house. Lindley disapproved, leading to a rift between the families. The relationship was irreparably damaged. Ben decided to improve the family's financial situation by arranging to sell some rare reptiles for a significant sum. However, the deal fell through due to a tragedy that occurred on the farm. On June 8, 2017, Lindley walked into one of the farm's barns. There, on the floor in a pool of blood, laid Ben. Lindley called his brother Sam for help and dialed the emergency number. She reported that she had found her husband unconscious on the ground. During the conversation, Lindley dropped the phone and ran outside. Sam continued the conversation and confirmed that his brother was dead. Sam suggested that a snake might be to blame for what had happened. Montgomery County Sheriff's deputies were called to the snake breeding facility. For the first time in a long while, law enforcement officers were afraid to enter the farm, facing the prospect of encountering over 3,000 snakes and conducting an examination of a man lying in blood, wary of a possible attack from a deadly viper believed to be the assailant. However, when Coroner Dave Colbert arrived and took a closer look, he discovered a shell casing on a shelf at eye level. This was something far more sinister than a venomous snake bite. Shell casings were found near the body, but no weapon was discovered. The assailant had shot Ben multiple times in the back and head. None of the relatives heard shots or saw the attacker. Sam and Lindley were taken to the sheriff's office for questioning. Lindley suggested that Sam might be involved in their husband's death, even citing a motive. Apparently, Ben wanted to sell the house, but Sam was opposed. Sam was asked to undergo a lie detector test, which he passed. The police had no reason to detain Lindley and Sam, so they were released. The investigation into who might have wanted Ben Rennick dead began. Various theories were proposed, the first being robbery, but it remained unconfirmed as none of the rare snakes were missing, and all valuable items remained untouched. Just days after the demise of Ben Rennick, police interrogated Lindley. They tested her hands and clothing for gunpowder residue, but the results came back negative. Following her husband's funeral, Lindley ceased communications with Sam and Eli. She sold her husband's business, inherited the house, and sought to claim a life insurance payout for Ben worth $1 million. After receiving the insurance money, Lindley planned to sell the Rennick family home for $740,000. Sam's family was notified about the eviction. Upon discovering the rapid insurance claim and business sale following her husband's passing, Sam Rennick suspected his brother's wife in the tragic event, sharing his suspicions with investigators. Lindley was called in for another interrogation. There, she admitted to having complex relations with Ben and occasionally meeting with a man named Arik. Arik had an alibi, so he was excluded from the list of suspects. Lindley's admissions were startling. It turned out, about 3 years after their marriage was officially registered, she was unfaithful to Ben, with at least 2 different men. Messages between the couple showed that Ben suspected his wife of infidelity, which had indeed strained their relationship lately. On October 5, 2017, the Missouri State Highway Patrol conducted a polygraph test on Lindley, informing her that she had failed. However, without solid evidence linking her to the crime, she was released. Nevertheless, the investigation into Ben Rennick's case slowed but did not cease. Later, investigators learned that a month before Ben Rennick's passing, Lindley had made her first attempt on his life. She concocted a story of Ben being a cruel tyrant who oppressed her daily and even physically assaulted her. She shared this story with a spa salon co-worker to garner support and assistance. They plotted to end Ben's life by giving him a poisonous protein shake laced with 15 Percocet pills. Unaware, Ben drank it. He fell severely ill during that period but survived, oblivious to the fact that he had been poisoned. Lindley Remick was interrogated by investigators 6 times in total. Further assistance in the investigation came unexpectedly. On January 14, 2020, information from a state prison surfaced, with a witness claiming to have knowledge about Ben Rennick's demise. The witness was Brandon Blackwell. He told Missouri State Highway Patrol investigators that Lindley had shot Ben and had conspired with her ex-boyfriend. Brandon mentioned that he had dated Lindley while she was married to Ben. 1.5 years after Ben's death, they had a child together, but by 2019, they had separated. Brandon claimed that Lindley confessed the act to him. She had conspired with her spa salon co-worker, Ashley Shaw, and another ex-boyfriend, Michael Humphrey. Years after Ben's demise, Lindley Rennick and her former boyfriend, Michael Humphrey, were arrested for Ben's death. However, following their arrest, Lindley and Humphrey pointed fingers at each other. So who really pulled the trigger? According to Michael's testimony, on the day of the event, he went to the farm with Lindley, who asked him to pose as a buyer. He put on gloves and was supposed to shoot Ben, but couldn't do it. Eventually, Lindley took the gun and shot her husband herself. The investigation into Ben Rennick's death continued for 3 long years. On January 16, 2020, arrest warrants were issued for Lindley Rennick, Michael Humphrey, and Ashley Shaw. Ashley was offered immunity in exchange for her cooperation, and she testified against her boss. The former spa salon employee shared that Lindley had complained about her husband and convinced her to assist in a plan. She claimed that Ben was constantly belittling, demeaning, and even physically harming her. Fearing divorce would lead to Ben gaining custody of her children, Lindley decided to eliminate him, planning together to poison him with a lethal cocktail. During questioning, Lindley and Michael accused each other of Ben's demise. In October 2021, Michael Humphrey faced trial in Audrain County. His lawyers hoped that revealing the murder weapon would lead to a second-degree murder charge. Despite possessing the gun, no conclusive DNA evidence was found on it. To lessen his sentence, Michael Humphrey also made a deal with the prosecution, disclosing the location of the murder weapon. His cooperation led to a life sentence on a less severe charge of second-degree murder, without defense at the trial. On January 3, 2021, Michael Humphrey was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole. The trial against Lindley Rennick began on December 6, 2021. She was charged with the shooting and demise of Ben Rennick on June 8, 2017, at his snake breeding facility in New Florence. Court documents stated that the plot to end Ben Rennick's life originated in Lindley's spa salon. The probable cause statement mentioned that Ben was aware of Lindley's financial troubles and that Lindley feared Ben could take her children away, leading her to fabricate a story of domestic abuse. The first attempt to end Ben Rennick involved a protein shake laced with narcotics. Search warrants for Ben and Lindley Rennick's Facebook accounts confirmed the protein shake story and Ben's awareness of Lindley's financial issues. The court hearing detailed the events of the day Ben Rennick was killed, fully reconstructing the sequence of events through cross-examination. On the day of the incident, Michael Humphrey picked up Lindley from the spa salon, while Shaw sent text messages from Lindley's phone inside the spa to conceal their true location and mislead the investigation. According to court documents, Humphrey intended to end Ben's life, but asked Lindley to do it. After firing shots, Humphrey collected most of the casings, but missed some in his haste. He also disposed of Lindley Rennick's clothing after returning to the spa, where Lindley took a shower, which helped avoid detection of gunpowder residue on her hands and clothes on the day of the incident. Defense attorney Catherine Berger asked Lindley Rennick to share her personal and family history, education in massage therapy, relationship with ex-boyfriend Michael Humphrey, work history, and the lead-up to her marriage with Ben Rennick, portraying the suspect as a victim of domestic violence. However, no evidence of such violence was found, undermining this defense narrative. Michael Humphrey was part of a group that allegedly planned to end Ben Rennick's life. Lindley Rennick described her relationship with Humphrey as codependent, involving his drug dealing and her addiction. Lindley Rennick ended her relationship with Humphrey at the end of 2010. According to previous witness statements, she reconnected with him about a month before Ben Rennick's death. Lindley Rennick denied the prosecution's allegations related to the supposed plans to end Ben Rennick's life, including the alleged failed attempt to poison Ben with a protein shake containing narcotics. The couple was experiencing both financial and marital difficulties. The spa center was failing, and contractual deals for selling snakes had yet to yield financial benefits. In court, Lindley admitted to having extramarital relationships with various men, for which she expressed deep regret. By the time Lindley considered discussing divorce, she was unsure who to turn to, given her father's divorce history and his firm views on divorce and affairs. Wanting someone to support her in her conversation with Ben, she reached out to past boyfriends, leading to a reconnection with Michael Humphrey. During cross-examination by the prosecution, Lindley admitted to willingly participating in her husband's death and intentionally concealing Michael Humphrey's involvement. Due to marital difficulties, including disputes, alleged physical and sexual abuse by Ben, and the stress associated with his snake breeding business, Lindley feared him and was concerned about his mood when she would bring up the topic of divorce on June 8, 2017. Hence, she brought Michael Humphrey to the farm that day. She claimed her presence at the farm was not to end her husband's life, but to request a divorce. Lindley said she took some trash from Ben to dispose of. Then she entered the nursery, where she saw Humphrey and Ben finishing washing their hands. Lindley recounted not being able to hear their conversation, focused more on how to tell Ben she wanted a divorce. Lindley's voice trembled as she described seeing Humphrey draw a pistol and shoot her husband. I screamed and ran outside. Then I heard a few more shots, everything went numb, and I remember just staring at the trees and Michael as he ran up to me and pushed me towards the car, Lindley testified in court. Reality hit when she returned to the snake breeding facility and discovered Ben's body. Lindley called Ben's brother Sam, who arrived. They checked for a pulse and whether Ben was breathing, thinking he might still be alive. Lindley expressed regret for not telling the police then and there that she had been at the breeding facility earlier with Michael Humphrey and not sharing her version of events. As she was suspected in her husband's death, the life insurance policy Ben Rennick had taken out years earlier could mean a payout of $1 million. Lindley waived her rights to this money. Ben Rennick became the beneficiary of a trust after his father's death. His assets went to Ben Rennick and his children, not Lindley. Nonetheless, Lindley received money she had contributed to the trust and a scholarship for her daughter. Lindley confessed she sought support, so she shared her version of events with her then-boyfriend Brandon Blackwell. However, that relationship ended as soon as Lindley had Brandon's child. During the court hearing, Lindley shared her regrets about her continuous deception. "I was just trying to escape from the truth of what happened," she said, adding that she never wished for her husband's death. Lindley Rennick's defense team did not petition for a new trial following the final verdict. No appeals were filed against her conviction. Lindley Rennick filed a defamation lawsuit against Blackwell, claiming his statements about her involvement in her husband's death were false. However, prosecutor Kevin Zellner questioned Lindley Rennick's testimony during cross-examination. He queried why she did not check on her husband after hearing gunshots. why she did not call 911, why she sent friendly messages to him and Humphrey after the shooting, and why she continued to lie even as emergency responders got involved. Rennick admitted to suggesting the police consider Ben's brother as a suspect. Often tearful and somber during her testimony, Prosecutor Zellner portrayed her as a mastermind, albeit a clumsy one. He described her as cruel enough to accuse the deceased's brother, saying during his rebuttal, "Do you know how cold your heart is?" During the sentencing for second-degree murder and armed criminal action, Lindley Rennick broke down. She did not admit her guilt. On December 9, 2021, she was found guilty of second-degree murder. The 33-year-old Lindley Rennick was sentenced to 13 years for murder and an additional 3 years for armed criminal action. In January, Judge Kevin Crane handed down a total sentence of 16 years. The sentence outraged Sam and other relatives of Ben. They believed that Michael and Lindley deserved life imprisonment, as they were both as guilty as any other co-conspirators. Sam Rennick's final words expressed complete disappointment. He was astonished that the life of a person in Missouri could be valued at just 13 years. Ben Rennick was a young man full of hope, with a potentially bright future. Due to the actions of one woman, he and Sam found themselves in a difficult situation, now unable to mend their relationship. Yet, the great snake breeder, Ben Rennick, continues to live on in a way he would surely have appreciated. He became famous for breeding a new snake species named after him. The reptile community was shaken by Ben Rennick's death and wanted to help. They collected and donated money to support Ben's family. Ben's valuable snakes were dispersed and sold to various reptile experts and enthusiasts, while the main snake in Ben's life was sentenced to 13 years. And we may never truly know who actually pulled the trigger, as this story is filled with the lies of the most vile and despicable reptile, Lindley Rennick.